Hi and welcome back to Broadsheet Sydney Around Town. If it's your first time here, don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss a video. I'm Emma Joyce, features editor at Broadsheet, and I'm the host of this short guide to Sydney. Let's get into it. Bondi's best looking bar, I'm going to say, so the one overlooking the ocean, Icebergs, dining room and bar, they have been doing something really special this winter on Sundays, which is they're having bartenders from other bars come in and create a kind of pop-up experience, which has been pretty fun. Double Juice Lounge recently popped up at Icebergs. And Ash, I know you were there. Was it a fun time?
Definitely. They brought in the boys from Double Juice, and that's the kind of whole idea behind the Winter Sundays events, is to kind of get that bar going in winter when there's less people at the beach and kind of have this program of fun events. So they came in with their own drinks, which are all kind of retro-inspired, sea breeze, those kind of 70s flavored cocktails. There was a cabanossi porcupine with all the toothpicks and some, what you'd expect from a 70s dinner party, and then, the music to match. So it's like an all-encompassing kind of feeling of that bar really taking over the Icebergs bar for that afternoon.
So their winter Sunday sessions aren't running every Sunday. They're running on select Sundays. And I know the next one is this weekend with Maybe Sammy. So what can we expect from Maybe Sammy being at Icebergs?
Yeah, well, I think everyone knows Maybe Sammy is one of Australia and the world's best cocktail bars. And they're kind of infusing a bit of flavor from some of their other outputs like Din and Nancy and El Primo Sanchez across the kind of drink and food offering. So you've got a tropical coffee margarita coming with a Patron tequila, a bit of Mr. Black coffee and some lime. There's another drink that has a kind of cream soda element to it. So there's some kind of tricks and bells and whistles that you can imagine. And obviously with Matty Opie, the drinks director at Icebergs, he's a very safe pair of hands to interpret these kind of off-the-wall choices from the team. And, I think the snacking part is also super important of these events. So, they're bringing in dishes that are inspired by the other venues, but also melding in a bit of Alex Pritchard's Icebergs brain to it. So like a coral trout dish, but it has a bit of coconut in it. And then you've got a marshmallow toasted on open coals with strawberry gum, which is very Icebergs, used native ingredients. So it's this great kind of melding pot of all of their stuff put together.
So they're running from about 4 p.m. till 6 p.m. So it's a couple of hours when you can go essentially to Icebergs and have the experience of being at a different bar. But they're like amping up the fun. It's not just cocktails and snacks. They're also bringing just a completely different vibe to the night. Have they got other events coming up?
Yeah. So excitingly, after the Maybe Sammy one, we've still got Earl's Juke Joint coming in from Newtown, and then we will have Shady Pines is kicking off the last one. So it's kind of been a great end of winter thing to just get people out and into that bar, and it's a great way for people who maybe don't go and dine in the restaurant as regularly to experience the Icebergs feeling and flavor and quality of service, because you can book a table for these, but you don't have to. You can
just
swing
walk in.
Yep, you could be Bondi to Bronte and just pop on by and
I was
drinks.
doing that at the weekend. And maybe not exactly that whole distance, but it has been such a beautiful winter that I can't imagine anywhere else really that you'd want to be. You wouldn't necessarily want to be coming into the city if you're already at the coast. And it's just a nice way to kind of appreciate the talents of the bartenders from other places, as well as the people making the snacks.
Yeah.
And kind of have more fun in a beautiful setting at sundown. Sometimes I think you forget that it is a bar that you can walk into and have just a great cocktail and this amazing view out over the ocean and over the beach. And so maybe this is a great way to remind people to kind of come back in, as you say, throughout winter. Is there anything planned for later this year that we should be keeping an eye out for?
Yeah, so they've got a few other things kicking off, rounding that out. There's a City to Surf brunch coming up, which is something really fun, because normally I think everyone's just trying to post City to Surf, rehydrate in any way they can, but they're actually bringing their brunch back for that day. So they're opening early at 9 a.m. So you can go and really treat yourself after that.
That's a great
run.
tip. Yeah.
Yeah. And then a little fun cheeseburger and Veuve Clicquot offer, which is inspired by one of the vintage Verve ads from the 20s or 30s around then, where you would have a little mini burger in this kind of New York inspired way with your champagne. So lots to enjoy throughout the rest of winter before we start jumping back in the pool, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen people jump back in the pool already, so it's not holding anyone back in Bondi. Well, thanks so much for telling us all about it. And you can find more information at broadsheet.com.au. Thanks, Ash.
Thanks.
Melbourne-born brand McIntyre have just opened a new boutique store in Paddington. Now, if you don't know about them, they're extremely colourful knitwear, and all of it's made with merino wool. And I know that you know so much about them, Ash, because you've written numerous stories for Broadsheet about McIntyre. They've got this really great backstory. So I'd love for you to tell us how they started and where the name McIntyre comes from.
Sure. Well, certainly, as you hit the nail on the head, they've certainly got a fun background, a really interesting story. So Ned and Raquel are a husband-wife duo. Ned is originally from Victoria and Raquel's from the Netherlands. So she brings a vibrant spirit, which is very important to the brand. And they basically spent a year living on Ned's family's merino wool farm, which is kind of out near Grampians, Warrnambool type direction in the Victorian countryside. And that's like a 5th generation merino wool farm since the kind of mid 1800s. And so spending time on that farm is what kind of got Raquel and Ned talking about building this brand out of the shared heritage of the wool from the farm.
I've certainly read in other interviews with them that they've said they weren't farm people. They didn't take to farm life, but they certainly took to kind of the benefits of wearing wool. And that's why they've created this particular brand. McIntyre, the name comes from a sort of the heritage of their farm.
Yeah,
right?
it's a name of one of the family members from back in the history of the farm and the family. So that was kind of the origin there. And I think it's very well connected to that. So Ned's dad, who is a wool farmer as well, has been in some of their campaigns before. One of their early campaigns actually shot a lot of the pieces on the workers on the farm. So they definitely like to make sure that the wool is very connected to the origin story as well.
Before we get into kind of the benefits of wearing merino, because they're so passionate about that, I feel like it would do them a disservice not to talk about why they've stuck with this natural fiber. Let's talk about the style, because they're so colorful. They've got like neon wool pants. Yeah. They've got striped jumpers. There's lots and lots of vibrance to them, which, let's talk about stereotypes, hasn't typically been something that you would say a Melburnian would wear.
Not at all, which is very funny as a Melbourne brand, because they kind of have a no black knits policy, which they've kind of broken a little bit. There is a black t-shirt in the range now because it was so requested. But I think that's also why they've stood out and been successful, is because they're not trying to do what a bunch of other knitwear brands are doing. And they really want to put this vibrancy forward. And the people that they shoot in their campaigns, the people they talk to in their zine they just launched as well with like very creative people like Jamie Priest, and they like that kind of vibrancy in life. And I think, it also comes from, it's both of them, but Raquel is, half Spanish, half Dutch. So she brings a very international, sunny flavor to things, and she has a real vibrancy about herself. And she was one of the ones like, I don't wear black. So it's kind of a really fun thing to walk into the store, especially this new one in Paddington that's fresh white and really clean. And then you see these bright pops of neon and orange and pink mixed with these kind of more earthy tones. It kind of makes it just really stand out from the pack.
Why did they choose Paddington over, like, say, CBD or somewhere else?
Yeah, for them, Raquel was saying a lot about how it's to be around the other brands that are in that neighborhood, because as an Australian like owned and created brand that uses Australian merino wool, they wanted to be around brands like Jardin and Jack and Holier and even Inku and Parlor X that are Australian owned businesses that Paddington's kind of known for. There's not that many internationals on that strip, and it's the perfect place to be if you're in that category.
Definitely Oxford Street has that tradition of championing the local brand. It went through a weird period, I'd say, where kind of a lot of shops close, but it feels like some of those places are opening back up, and it's just like a beautiful stretch of Sydney where you can shop locally.
Yeah, that southern stretch is really connected now with kind of like, as I was saying, like Jardin on one corner, you're going all the way through past Scanlon, Jack and Jack, and Hansel and Gretel all the way up. You've kind of got quite the little trip along there now. And
so they've found their perfect friends, essentially, their fashion friends alongside. Let's talk about the collection they've got at the moment, because it is men and women. Anyone can shop there, really. They've got beanies. They have kind of knit sets, like perfect little matching items. They have so much. What would you say is kind of a standout? I
think it's definitely the color across everything is the first thing that you really see. I think that's really interesting about their brand is it's very slow fashion style. They don't add a whole bunch of pieces each season. There's not necessarily a new collection. They just add pieces here and there. So this time they've done a kind of colorful striped sweater, which is the first time they've done kind of mixed colors in one piece. It's usually very block color. I think we mentioned before that the t-shirts are a big thing for them. So merino wool t-shirts seems scratchy if you think about it, but they're super fine, really well crafted pieces that you wear all the time, and full knit dresses, which are just going to be beautiful for any time of year because everything in there is kind of made to go into your wardrobe and mix and match with other pieces. It's not just a bulky sweater in winter and call it a day.
Yeah, it's so good that you mentioned the season, because obviously it's amazing that they're opening in winter. That seems perfect. But it's going to get warm again really soon, and you don't necessarily think of like putting on knitwear in the middle of summer in Sydney. However, these co-founders are really passionate about all the benefits of wearing merino wool and what you can do with it. Can you give us kind of an idea of what they like to talk about the most?
Certainly. Merino wool, from what I've learned from Ned and Raquel, because they're very passionate and very knowledgeable, is one of the main things about it is it's very temperature regulating. Kind of, most people know if you sleep in linen at nighttime, it's quite insulating, cool in summer, warm in winter. Wool has a similar effect, and it's very moisture resistant. So it's less odor. You're washing it less. It's actually, because it's a living fiber, it behaves very differently to cottons and polyesters, which absorb more moisture, and therefore you need to wash them more. They get wetter easier if you get in a bit of a downpour. So it just inherently makes everything more breathable and insulating, which you wouldn't think of straight away, but especially in the way that they're weaving these really super fine socks and tees and tank tops. That's where you start to weave in those wool pieces into your whole year-round wardrobe.
I know Ned has been super passionate about how you should treat any items that you buy from McIntyre or any general wool items. But he likes to say you should think of them like jeans and maybe wash maybe once a season rather than every time you wear it.
Yeah, they definitely, especially for the bigger knits, you don't need to wash them as much. As we were just saying, the odor resistancy is a main thing. So he said even with the t-shirts, which are closer to the body, even he washes them once a week versus every day for a cotton t-shirt. So therefore you're kind of just saving time, money and energy every time you wear one.
Will Ned and Raquel be in the store? Will they be running the store in Paddington?
They actually live upstairs. So certainly this been a bit of a passion project for them. So when they moved, they found a place that they could kind of run the business from and the shop all together. So you certainly will see them anytime you're in there and would be greeted by them. So they're very much in the store working on the brand nonstop, and they're very great. You just knock on the door and say hello, and they're super friendly and super knowledgeable and can help you find what needs fitting in your wardrobe.
We're like, hi, I spilt red wine all over my jumper. What do I do? Help.
They probably have an answer for that. They've even got an how to reverse the shrinking thing in their FAQs on the website if you get really stuck.
Their website is also a fun place to shop from, so I highly recommend people check that out. I know Raquel models some of those items. Yeah. Well, McIntyre's new store is at 208 Oxford Street in Paddington, and I know I'm going to check it out this weekend. Thanks, Ash.
No worries.
And that's all we have time for today. As always, you can keep up to date with what's happening around Sydney at broadsheet.com.au and on Instagram at broadsheet_Sid. I'll be back next week, same time, same place. Chat then.